Hey everybody, happy Friday. Leadership in Changing Times, Emerging Leaders Track, right? Leading others today. Leading others today. How are you? Hope that you're having a great, great day. We've got mid-level leaders in the public works sector joining us from coast to coast on both sides of the North American border. We have people joining us in Alexandria, Virginia. We have people joining us in Santa Ana, California. We have people joining us in Alberta. We have people joining us in Florida. People joining us in Ontario, Canada, and we have people joining us in Kansas. We have all points across North America covered in the public works sector. And here you are, the mid-level leader. We've got Margie in the chat box today. Say hi, Margie.
Hello there.
There you go, Margie in the chat box. And we are about to start our next competency, right? We just got done doing agent of change, right? The agent of change. That's the individual that knows how to change things. We talked about how to change you, but we also talked about how to change performance. Remember how to change performance? And we had that dialogue about a process for changing performance. And we talked about being a good coach. We talked about coaching performance. We talked about improving performance. We talked about you and your counterparts being the key to the performance management, because you're the ones working with people on a regular basis. And how do I move somebody from where they're at to their full potential? We talked about the 3 reasons why employees don't perform. And we walked through a process of moving them from that poor performance to success by identifying the 3 reasons why employees don't perform, which one of them it was, and then we walked through it, right? Remember that flow chart? Hopefully you took the time to check that out. Hopefully you really took it in. And then I gave you those always and nevers, and I asked you to read those every day. And I asked you to send out that survey. Right? That survey. Did you send out that survey? How am I doing? What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? Suggestions for my improvement. And if you could send me back to class or school, what class would you make me take? Remember that? Well, hopefully you did it. And then I challenged you to send in your one thing. And many, many, many of you have sent in your one thing. But I am going to tell you that in this coming week, I'm going to be sending you a note if you have not sent in your one thing. If you haven't sent in your one thing, you're going to get a note from me. Because the week after that, I've got to send a report to all of the directors. And in that report, it's going to say, you know, who's participating in the program, who's opened the emails, who's watched the videos, and who's done the assignments. So fair warning, you got to turn in your one thing. Because if you haven't turned in your one thing, whoever you report to is going to know where you stand. Now, that's not because taskmaster or anything like that. It's just to say that, you know, they deserve a report. They're paying for a program. They got to know the participation level of the people in the program. All right, so what are we doing today? We're starting the next competency. The next competency. Big picture, holistic systems thinking. Now, here's the drill in life today. The drill is that there's not enough time, energy, or effort to get done everything you and I need to get done. Think about it. There's not enough time in a week to get done everything you need to get done at work, everything you need to get done at home, everything you need to get done in your personal life, everything you need to get done in the volunteer activities you do, at your place of faith, whatever, not enough time. And not only is there not enough time, but there's not enough energy. How many of you ever felt exhausted at the end of the day? You're just exhausted, you're wiped. And then you compile day after day after day after day of being wiped, and you got nothing left. You're spent. The overwhelming nature of today. I know I've experienced that. I'm sure you've experienced that. So for me, I looked around and said to myself, man, there's got to be a better way than this. Because I ain't making it. And even deeper than that, I found myself as a supervisor in positions that were always beyond my capacity. beyond my intelligence, beyond my knowledge base, beyond my skill level, beyond my capacity. And whether that was as a young coach, beyond my capacity, whether that was when I say young coach, I mean a coach coaching kids, and I had no experience, youngest coach to ever do what I was doing. Then as a young professional in business, well beyond my capacity, managing and supervising people who had been in the business longer than I was alive. Then as an executive leader who had no business being in the job that I was in, leading a bunch of people that totally knew more than I did. So all the way along the way, I found myself beyond my capacity. And I had two choices. I could quit or find a way to win. And the way that I found a way to win was I came across the writings of a guy named Archimedes. Archimedes. This Archimedes guy was a mathematician. He was a philosopher. He was an inventor. He was the father of geometry, or one of the fathers of geometry. And in my attempt to find some solutions to better equip me when I was beyond my capacity, when I didn't know what to do, I came across this guy, Archimedes. And a quote, actually. Archimedes said this. Archimedes said, "Give me a place to stand, and I will move the world." Because I needed a pick-me-up. So I was looking through motivational quotes. I was like, because I was one of those kind of guys. Motivational quote, they kind of pick me up and give me some inspiration and quote. And Archimedes, "Give me a place to stand, and I will move the world." And what he was basically saying was, you know what, I have what it takes. Give me a place to stand, and I'll move the world. And I thought, initially, that he was talking about the human potential, that he was talking about the human capacity, that he was talking about you as a human being and everything that you had in you. That you could do it. You can move the world. So I thought. Till I started to investigate where that quote came from. And I found that he was talking about something completely different. Any of you on the engineering side, you know what I'm talking about. Archimedes was talking about his fulcrum and his lever. His fulcrum, and his lever. What he was saying was that through his invention of a fulcrum and lever, that he could move just about any stone. You know what I'm talking about? You put a hard rock down or a hard block down. You get a piece of wood or iron or steel, and you put it over the block, and then you lift. And you lift something. And you're able to lift something that you could never lift on your own. Oh. So what Archimedes was saying, if I had a fulcrum big enough and I had a lever big enough, I could just about move the world. I was like, whoa. I'm not following you in. What it told me was, I just need to find the fulcrums and levers of life to help me manage my time, help me delegate more effectively, help me come up with a great idea, help me take on all these challenges I face. I don't need to be brilliant. I just need to find the force multiplier to help me get done what I need to get done. And then I realized that he was the inventor of the compound pulley. And all of a sudden that compound pulley allowed him to pull in a ship that was 10, 15, 20, 100 times his weight. Legend has it that he went out to the bay to show everybody his new compound pulley. And he pulled in a ship that was in the bay. He pulled it to shore, a boat that was out in the bay, that 10 men had to pull in the day before. And the people thought he was a god. People thought he was incredible. Because he was able to do this thing that took 10 men to do. Now stop and think about that. Now it may not hit you the way it hit me, but what it hit me was he had something that allowed him to have greater force than he had on his own. Now take that and set it right there. And then I stumbled upon this concept of systems thinking. You see, I think that's the answer in the 21st century. I think the answer to not enough time, not enough energy, not enough resources at my disposal to get done everything I need to get done is our next competency. Big picture, holistic systems thinking. What's a system? A system is a group of parts that are deeply integrated for a specific task. Archimedes, fulcrum, lever, two parts deeply integrated for a specific task that allows the human being to do more than they could do on their own. The compound pulley is a set of parts deeply integrated for a specific task that allows the human being to do more than they're capable of doing on their own. But you know what else is? Effective time management. Or the system that I talked to you about, about managing poor performance and improving poor performers. That was a system, wasn't it? I'm still not following you. Okay, maybe you'll follow this. The world is a system. Look around you. There's systems at play everywhere we go and everything we do. And they're holistic systems. It's like, doesn't it freak you out that there's this big ball of fire in the sky that totally controls what we do around here? The orbit of the planets, the hot and the cold. If that ball of fire moved 1 inch further or 1 inch closer to where we are right now, our lives would completely change. Isn't that amazing? Or there's this white thing up in the sky at night that if it moved 1 inch this way or 1 inch that way, it would completely change. It controls the way the water flows in the oceans. That's a system. It's not random. It's a system. Even though there's no wires, all that's connected. Do you see it? I think if you're going to be successful in the 21st century, you have to see these intangible systems. Now, here's the funny thing. Systems either organically grow up and take hold, or they're specifically developed for a task or an outcome. Now, even deeper than that, those systems that grow up, they sound something like this. Organically grow up, they sound like this. I don't know, it's just what we do around here. I don't know, it's just what we do around here. I don't know, it's just what we do around here. Or they were developed for a specific purpose, but maybe now it's not relevant anymore. It doesn't have the same point anymore. It's not effective anymore because we developed it for a certain thing, and that certain thing isn't as it was when we developed it. Maybe I'm still not making my point. Okay, how about this? How about mechanical systems? It's like that thermostat on the wall. That system, that thermostat, I turn the knob, something happens, because that's a deeply integrated set of parts that help me do something or have a certain result. Or how about the mechanical human interface, a bicycle? That's a system. That multiplies my force. I can go faster than I would on my own. How about this one? This is even deeper. How about predator and prey? You know, Marlon Perkins on the Serengeti plain with the cheetah and the wildebeest, right? The cheetah takes down the wildebeest and the cubs all eat. And then the hyenas come. And then after that, the vultures come. And then after that, all of the ground mice and squirrels and bugs come. And then it decomposes into the ground and fertilizes the trees, which produce air. What in the hell is that all about? That's crazy. And then produces air. System. System. Do you even see the systems that are at play around you? I don't know. It's just what we do around here. How about this? Social systems. The cliques that you have in your workplace. The people that congregate with one another. Do you see that system? How about this? The system for developing the citizen of tomorrow. The system for developing this. Is there even a system for developing the citizen of tomorrow? Or does it just organically grow up? The attributes and qualities we hope to see in a citizen 20 years from now, are we strategically and intentionally instilling those in our kids as a community? Or are we just leaving it to chance? Well, whatever happens, and then complaining with what we get. Complaining that we don't get the kind of kids we want. But we left it to chance. You're on a rant. No, I'm trying to get you to see the point. How about this one? I don't know. I'm just so excited to be having this baby. You know, my mom had me when she was 15, and her mom had her when she was 15, and here I am 15 having a baby. Oh, you're being judgmental. I'm not judging. How about this? I don't know, we're just doctors. It's just what we do. My family's always been doctors. His dad was a doctor, and his dad was a doctor, and now I'm a doctor, and we have systems. Deming said that 85% of poor performance within the workplace was systems-based. Now look, I'm not talking about systematic. Just because something is sequential doesn't mean it's a system. A pile of rocks is not a system. Take out a rock, you still got a pile of rocks. A car engine is a system. Take out the carburetor, the car doesn't work no more. Do you see the systems in your workplace? Do you see the systems you're using every day? Now remember, they have either organically grown up over a period of time. It's like when I see a dad or a mom and they say to me, my kid's a wreck. And I say, okay, what kind of system did you create? Well, what do you mean what kind of system? What kind of discipline systems? What kind of educational systems? What kind of accountability systems? Were you proactively developing your child, or were you leaving it to chance? Well, I don't know. Well, what qualities did you want to see in them when they were 18? Well, I wanted them to be a hard worker. I wanted them to be responsible. Okay, well, how did you teach that when they were 9? Intentionally. Intentionally teaching it when they were 9. And then you complain with the way they are when they're 18. Come on now, that's nobody's fault but the person in charge. Just like in the workplace. If you're not happy with your employee's performance, it's the person in charge that's responsible for the systems that have been created. Again, they either organically grow up or they're developed for a specific purpose. If you're not getting the results you want in your workplace from your employees, probably systems. You're not getting the results you want in your home, probably the systems. Yeah, but you don't go around creating systems for your home. Maybe you should. Now, the word systems may connotate that it's incredibly formal. And to some degree, there is some systematic, sequential. Just think in these terms. It's a deeply integrated set of parts to give me a specific outcome or for a specific purpose. A specific outcome, a specific purpose. That's a system. I think the only way you're going to make it today is if you have really, really, really good systems. And over the next 3 weeks, we're going to unpack this concept. And we're going to use some examples to teach you how to be more of a systems thinker. Because Archimedes was right. Give me a place to stand and I will move the world. But not because of my talent, not because of my intelligence, not because of my ability, but because I know how to create systems that the times require. Now what's funny about that is that's very freeing, man, to me. Because now I can do it. Look what Capra said. He said that systems thinking was moving from parts to whole, to seeing the whole picture, not just looking at little pieces. Senge said that that's the problem when we go to try to solve dilemmas, that we only look at a slice. We only look at a slice instead of looking at the big picture. So we solve problems in slices and then wonder why our big problems never get solved, because we don't take them big, we take them slice. Capra said that we had to move our thinking from things to relationships, the interconnectivity of things. That we had to move from structures to processes. That we had to move from hierarchy to network. Isn't that telling today? Right? The whole world is moving from hierarchy to network, organic network. We had to move from rationale to intuitive. And we had to move from analysis to creation. We couldn't any longer be what happened. We had to intentionally create systems to make happen what we want to happen. If I want a certain life, then I create a system to give me that. Now, does that guarantee I'll have it? No, but it increases the likelihood significantly. I want a certain kind of kid, then I create a system to develop that kid. Now, will that guarantee that my kid won't be strung out on drugs? No, but it gives me a hell of a lot better shot. Will it guarantee that I have a great relationship with my spouse? No, but it gives me a greater shot, especially in difficult and challenging, busy and overwhelming times. Today's effective leader is a big picture, holistic systems thinker. Turn the page. Now, remember, the way this thing always works is 3 weeks gives us plenty of time to unpack the concepts. All I'm doing today is shaking your tree, right? I'm getting up in your grill, as they used to say when I was a kid. I'm getting in your grill to shake the tree, to get you to think a little bit. And then over the 3 weeks, we'll work through the examples. But the first step is taking that self-survey, right? That's always the first step. So either 1, I'm totally not like this. 10, I'm totally like this, right? One or the other. 10, I'm totally like it. 1, I'm not, or somewhere in between, because this helps us focus our learning, right? The big picture thinker, the big picture, holistic, systems thinking is the next competency. And what does that person do? They utilize a proactive systems thinking, holistic approach. So from now on, you're going to create systems to get things done. From now on, you're going to look at the systems that are already in place and ask yourself, is that applicable still today? You're going to see the world in systems because the world is a system. Your body is a system. The lights, the electricity, it's all systems thinking, man. All systems thinking. Let's go through the survey quickly. I'll read them out loud, and then you just go through them. I understand that there's a symbiotic relationship between human beings. I can apply strategies for learning those symbiotic relationships, that there's a connectivity amongst people. I can apply strategies for learning about a group, its key stakeholders, its resources. I can demonstrate knowledge of the roles and responsibilities of employees, departments, and governmental entities. I can demonstrate knowledge for the social capital and organizational and community assets. Now, what does that even mean? That I realize that for my department to thrive, there's other stuff going on. There's other departments going on. There's other agencies going on. There's other stakeholders involved. And I see how they all connect. I'm aware of my department's culture or DNA. Your department has this. I don't know. It's just what we do around here. That was a system that organically grew up and took hold. I don't know. That's just what we do around here is a telltale sign of a system that organically grew up and took hold. Now, whether it's any good or not, I don't know. Only you can evaluate that. But make no mistake, that's a system. And the results thereof are either good or bad. Either what you want or not. I facilitate the development of teams and coalitions to work proactively to address common goals. I can facilitate the development of systems and processes that will foster an environment that supports success. I have a system for coaching performance. We already talked about that. You should have one now. I understand how to build a team. I'm aware of what motivates others. I can apply strategy to motivate others. So either you're 1, 10, or somewhere in between. Now look at this. If any of the parts or activities in the systems is weakened or misaligned, the system will fail. If any of the parts or activities in the system is weakened or misaligned, the system will fail. That's the bottom line. So, systems are about alignment of all of those parts. That you've taken those different parts and whatever the situation is, and you've integrated them in some kind of alignment that's best to get you the result you want. So here's the funny thing. When I said it was freeing, here's what I mean. So for me, when I looked out over it all, for me, when I took it all in, when I was overwhelmed, didn't have the talent, didn't have the ability, didn't have the capacity, or when I got to a place where I had the ability, had the capacity, had the knowledge, but I needed to be more efficient and effective, it always came down to two things. I had a choice, and I could build a system. Because I have a choice in my thoughts, I have a choice in my words, I have a choice in my actions. I do have choices on those things. Can't choose everything that happens around me, no doubt about that. But I have the power to choose my thoughts, my words, and my actions. And I have the power to create systems. That's where Archimedes was coming from. Give me a place to stand and I will move the world. That's where he was coming from. He was saying very clearly, not some altruistic, namby-pamby, Richard Simmons, it's all possible. But he was rooting it in logic and saying, With this fulcrum, with this lever, a big enough fulcrum and a big enough lever, I can move just about anything. Big enough compound pulley, I can move just about anything. Great systems, I can do just about anything. And I can do it with less. Less time, less energy, less effort if I've got great systems. So I think you can succeed in these changing times through your personal choice, and I will build a great system. And that was very freeing for me, because then it wasn't about my talent, it wasn't about my ability, it wasn't about anything else except my capacity to choose to build good systems that the times would require. So over the next 3 weeks, what are we going to do? Well, I'm going to try to emphasize 3 systems. 3 systems. Actually, maybe more, but we'll see. 3 systems. We're going to talk about a system for time. How do you organize your time? Now, here's the funny thing about time. It's a perishable commodity. And many of you in your commitment, many of you that have sent me notes about your commitment, many of you have said, I got to be more organized. But I don't think you really mean organized in the sense of my desk needs to be cleaner. I think what you really mean is you want your life and the time that you have available to have a greater impact. So one of the systems we're going to talk about, and we're actually going to talk about it for a week, starting this coming week, we're going to talk about maximizing the utilization of your time. And we're going to walk it out for a week. And every day next week, you're going to get an email from me, because it's that important. The first one's going to be a little longer, but then each successive one will be a little shorter. The idea here is, how do I maximize the utilization of my time? And we'll talk more about that in a second. We're going to talk about innovative, outside-the-box thinking. How do I think outside the box? In other words, how do I come up with a creative idea? How do I do that? Is it because someone sprinkled pixie dust on me and all of a sudden I'm just brilliant and I come up with innovative ideas? Or is it deeper than that? Is it more than that? I think it's deeper than that, and it's more than that. I think it's a learned skill. I believe that you can learn how to think outside the box. I think you can learn how to be creative, because it has to do with your patterns of thinking. So stop the bus for just a second. By the time we get to be the age that you and I are, we have developed some patterns of thinking. When you see a problem, you probably approach it in the same sequence. You ask yourself this question, and then this question, and then this question, and then this question, and you come up with, hopefully, a solution. Or perhaps when you see an opportunity, you probably approach it in the same sequence. It's called a pattern of thinking. And the tough part is that you and I use the same sequence over and over again, so much so that researchers say this. Researchers say that those patterns actually create grooves in our brain. Can you believe that? They actually create grooves in our brain, because the synapses and the chemicals fire in the same way over and over and over again, that they actually create grooves. And then we wonder why we don't innovate. We don't innovate because we haven't built a system that will generate creative ideas or innovative ideas. And not next week, but the following week, I'll send you an email that will talk about a system that will generate, or is more likely to generate, creative ideas. Now, we're also going to talk about some other systems over the next 3 weeks. But funny thing is, I've already given you a couple of systems. You might just not have recognized it. Like that change continuum. That change continuum is a system, isn't it? It's a system. It's a system, step by step by step. An integrated set of parts to get you a result, change. So I took this thing, this thing, this thing, this thing, I put them into alignment, and I'm hoping the result will be change. Or how about this? That coaching strategy I gave you. Remember that diagram? That was a system. We integrated some steps, we integrated some approaches, we integrated some philosophies, and that gave us an outcome, better performance, a system. So we've already given you systems, we just didn't call them that yet. So over the next 3 weeks, I'm going to walk you through a number of systems. And in those systems, I hope that you'll begin to learn to be a systems thinker. Now, you might not agree with the systems that I share with you. Like in a moment, when we take the balance of our time and start talking about time. You may not agree with the time management or time maximizing the utilization of your time principles that I share with you today and over the next week. I don't care. I really don't care, okay? I don't give a rip. But you better have some system. Like you might not like my system of delegation that we'll talk about in the future. Or motivating an employee. I don't care. I just know this, you better have one. Systems thinking. So the systems that we'll share with you aren't necessarily ones that you'll agree with or will fit you, but they're an attempt to get you to be more of a systems thinker. Okay? All right, turn the page. So the beginning of this systems conversation will be around what I think is one of the biggest dilemmas that we face today. Time. Maximizing the utilization of one's time. We're going to use an analogy or a metaphor or an allegory. I'm not sure which one. Any of those, Jeff? Jeff is our expert on language and what words mean. And so I always clear it with Jeff, because sometimes I use words that don't mean what I think they mean. So Jeff is either behind the glass going like this, which means he has no idea what that word means. Or he's going like this. He actually knows what that word means. It's one of those two reactions. And I gauge what I say based on what I see behind the glass. So imagine, if you will, that there's this great banker. There's a great banker. And this great banker, even though bankers are hated today, this great banker comes to your house. This great banker comes to your house. And he knocks on your door. And the great banker said, "Hello, I am the great banker." And you're like, "Are you like Publishers Clearinghouse? Are there cameras here? What's going on, man? What can I do for you? Watching the game. What's up?" "I am going to give you $86,000. "Really? Like, where are the cameras, dude? Like, is like Jeff Probst around here somewhere? This is a reality TV show? What's going on? I get $86,000? And the great banker says to you, "Yes. I'm going to credit your account $86,000. But there'll be two stipulations." And you say, "Okay, here we go. Here's the but. But what?" No. Two stipulations, the great banker says. Stipulation number one, I'll put that money in there at the beginning of the day. That's easy. Stipulation number two, at the end of the day, the stroke of midnight, I'm going to come back. Anything that's still left in the positive balance in that account, I will debit. I will take away. And you say, well, let me get this clear. You're going to give me $86,000, and then I have a day, and what am I supposed to do with it? Oh, the great banker says, that's the funny thing. You can do with it whatever you want. I can do with it whatever I want. So I can go spend it however I want. No strings attached. Yep. I could give it to charity. Yep. I could pay off my house. Yep. I could give it to my family to go spend at the mall. Yep. Really, there's no strings. No strings. You're going to get $86,000 at the beginning of the day. And at the end of the day, anything left in the positive balance, I'll take away from you. He said, but there's one thing to keep in mind. You don't know if you're getting another $86,000 tomorrow. Oh. Right. You might get another $86,000. All you know for a fact is $86,000 at the beginning of the day. And at the end of the day, anything left in a positive balance, I'm going to take away from you. So you close the door and you start to think, how will I use this $86,000? What am I going to do with the $86,000? How will I spend the $86,000? It's a finite amount of money. It isn't $1 million. It's $86,000. And I don't know if I'm going to get any more tomorrow. Let me ask you this question. Would you leave a dime in that account? A penny? Would you leave a penny in the account? And if you're in Canada, you don't even have pennies anymore. Did you know that? Did you know the Canadians got rid of pennies? So in Canada, you wouldn't even have a choice. You wouldn't have pennies. You just have nickels and dimes. Would you leave a nickel and dime in the account if you're in Langley, BC? Or if you're in Manatee, Florida, would you leave a penny in the account? I bet you, no, you wouldn't. Even if you moved it to another account, you'd do something productive with the $86,000 if the great banker came to your house. Well, you check this if you don't check anything else I say. You, me, Margie, Jeff, every one of us gets $86,000 every single day. What are you talking about? Oh, didn't you know? 86,400 seconds in a day. They're given to you as a gift to spend however you want. You see, that's the one thing that winners and losers have in common. It's time. 60 minutes, 60 seconds to a minute, 60 minutes to an hour, 24 hours in a day, and 168 hours in a week. Every one of us gets the same amount of time. Do you have a system to maximize the utilization of that $86,000? Do you have a system to maximize the utilization of that 168 hours in a week? Archimedes was clear. Give me a place to stand and I will move the world. Whatever system you're utilizing for your time should be a force multiplier, not a detractor. When I invest an hour into something, it should be like 5 hours. That's called maximizing the utilization of your time. Notice I'm not using the term managing your time. Utilizing this money metaphor, allegory, what's the other one? Example. Utilizing the money example, staying in that scene. Would I want to just manage my money, or would I want to maximize my investment? I want my $1 to become $50 and $100. Just like I want my 1 hour to have the impact of like 5 hours. How do I do that in today's crazy life? There's a reason why the first system we're talking about is time. Because it's the one thing we all feel like we don't have enough of. Because we don't. And because the great banker was smart. The great banker said, you might get some more tomorrow. Yesterday's a canceled check. Tomorrow's a promissory note. Today's the only cash I have at my disposal. The difference between the winners and losers isn't how much time they get. Winners and losers get the same. The difference is how do they utilize it. So for the next 5 days starting on Monday, we're going to unpack the concepts of maximizing the utilization, of your time. But here's some principles that we have to think about before we launch in. Some foundational principles that we have to think about before we launch into it. Principle number 1, time is a perishable commodity. You know, some people think I'm a jerk, that I'm an ass. And you know what? I am. No doubt. Because if you were to call me on the phone, here's what I'm going to say. Well, what's the point? What's the point of our conversation? What's the desired outcome? Why are you calling me and what do you hope to achieve? Not because I'm rude, but because my time is a perishable commodity. It's ticking. And when you get to your night tonight, when you lay your head down on your pillow after you watch Letterman or after you watch Leno or after you watch Jimmy Fallon, who will soon be Leno, or Conan, or who's the other guy on ABC? Any of those guys? Whatever happened to my man? What was my man with the high haircut? Arsenio Hall. Whatever happened to my man Arsenio Hall? He went away. Anyways, after you watch those guys and gals, or Ellen, if Ellen comes on late, what's that other lady? Chelsea whatever. Chelsea Lately. Is her real name Lately, or is she just late at night? Oh, it's just a show. I didn't know. What you just experienced, if you didn't understand, that's called ADD. Right there. That's called ADD. If you don't know what ADD is, you just experienced ADD. Anyways, back to the matter at hand. When you lay your head down on your pillow at night, tonight, any of those $86,000 that you haven't used to improve yourself, anything that you haven't invested in your kids, anything you haven't invested in your home, anything you haven't invested positively in your workplace, anything left over that you didn't do something positive with is what? Gone. forever. So yeah, I can honestly look in the camera, I can look at people and just say, I am a jerk. Because it's perishable commodity, dude. It's going away. And I'll never get it back. I'll never get it back. My daughter said something to me the other day, little Nadia. She said, Dad, you're always busy. And then I think what she was saying to me, and the way I read it was this: you're always busy, and you don't have time for me. You know what that tells me? I'm doing a poor job of utilizing my time. And I need to listen over this next week. Over this next week, I'm going to be revisiting the principles that I'm going to be trying to share with you, because I've lost my way a little bit. Nadia shouldn't feel like I don't have time for her. She's the most important thing. Her and Nia and Kian. Now, my 22-year-old Cassie, she's on her own now, right? She's making plenty good money. She's good. She can take care of me. She's going to be my sugar girl. What's my point? My point is, I need to revisit these principles sometimes as well, because I'm not getting the result that I want. My system is misaligned. My system is misaligned. I've got to get my system in alignment, because perishable commodity, because she just turned 9, and before I know it, she's going to be 19. And she's either going to be covered in tattoos with piercings all over, throwing plates at me in the kitchen, screaming, where were you? Where were you when I needed you? Or she's going to be graduating valedictorian. And a lot of that will be based on the systems I use. Now, I'm not saying you can't be having tattoos all over your body with piercings everywhere and still be valedictorian. Don't be sending me emails. You know the point I'm trying to make. But that'll be based on the systems I use and how I manage or maximize this perishable commodity called time. Do you understand the urgency of time? And how much of it do we waste? We're going to do an exercise at the end of next week where I'm going to actually have you track your time for a week and see where it goes. Where does it go? Yeah, but you're saying, you're going to get me all organized and I'm never going to have a chance to relax, man. Can't live like that. Totally agree. Obviously, there needs to be time for you and needs to be time to relax. So, there needs to be time for you just to veg. There needs to be time for your family. But when we organize that, when we're intentional in that process, then those things actually happen. And we live a fuller, more impactful life as a leader. How about this? It's the one thing that winners and losers have in common. I used to complain because of the color of my skin. And I thought I couldn't be what I needed to be because of the color of my skin. And then I realized, wait a minute. Winners and losers all have the same thing in common. We all got the same amount of time. We all got the same amount. We got 168 hours in this week. It's how I'm going to use that time. I didn't say I could control what happened to me, but I certainly did say I could control how I use my time. Well, no. My boss controls my time. Well, we'll talk about ways to manage your boss. We'll talk about ways to prioritize. We'll talk about ways to delegate in the coming weeks effectively with sound delegation principles. Time. Maximizing the utilization of your time. One of the key principles is that it's one thing that we have in common. Here's another key principle. This is really important. We're going to go on another, you're going to say, Ian, your total history lesson today. Pareto. Pareto's law or Pareto's principle. Now listen what Pareto said, because this, I got to get my pen. Listen what Pareto said. I need something to shake at you. Pareto said that, interesting, and he was a mathematician, right? A little bit later than Archimedes. Fact is, at the turn of the 19th century, 20th century. Pareto said this. Pareto said, interestingly enough, there are some activities that when I do them, give me a greater return than other activities. He called those high return activities. I call them high return on investment because we're using the money analogy. He called them high return on investment activities. Like in your workplace, there are some activities that when you do them, give you a greater return than others. Like you put an hour into it, but it returns 5 hours worth of work. And if you had a choice between, if you only had an hour, what would be the best choice of activity to do? That high return on investment activity. You know what the high return on investment activity is at my house with my wife? Take Gina to a Broadway show. If I take Gina to a Broadway show, That's like 90. I get 6 months of credibility out of that, man. I get 6 months of hard work. I get 6 months of nobody on my back. I get 6 months. If I'll just take, it doesn't have to be a good Broadway show either. I just find a Broadway show in our area, take her to the Broadway show, and that's like 6 months. You know another one? Even if I can't do that, give her a Broadway show. So I was in line at the grocery store the other day. I grabbed Les Mis. I grabbed it, $19.99. And I looked at it and I was like, wow, $20 for that DVD? I'll never watch it. And then I said to myself, wait a minute. High return on investment activity. I bring this DVD home, I hand it to the Broadway loving Gina, and she watches it. High return on investment activity. Being silly? Perhaps, but follow me here. That 4 hours or 5 hours invested in an evening of a dinner and a show would return a greater investment than if I spent 50 hours on the couch at home with her, cuddling up next to her. Right? You'd say, well, maybe that's more effective. I'm telling you, that 5 hours here is like 500 hours of this. It's a high return on investment activity. It's a silly example. It's a goofy example. Gina's probably watching right now. I don't know if she's pissed off at me, but it's true. Well, the same is in your workplace. What is that in high investment activity? In your personal life, for yourself. High return on investment activities. As we begin to identify high return on investment activities, we start to become more efficient. We start to become more effective. And as we start to schedule them intentionally and proactively, we exponentially, just like that lever and fulcrum, we can get more done with less. That's a force multiplier. So you, as a mid-level leader, maximizing the utilization of your time, a part of that is Pareto's principle, identifying those activities. Now, that takes us into the next thing. I don't just identify them like this, oh, that's nice. I intentionally block them and schedule them. We'll talk with you next week about the concept of time blocking. Time blocking. How many of you get sucked into email every day? If you're in the kind of job where you get a lot of emails and you get sucked into emails, and then an email, you get that little ping comes in, or Outlook, that thing, and you hear that noise, and an email comes in, and so you look at it. And so then you start to respond to it. And then another one comes in, and you start to respond to that. And then another one comes in, and you start to respond to that. And the next thing you know, an hour and a half later, all you've done is respond to emails. And you wonder where the day went. I would say that that's a low return on investment activities. But you have to answer email, don't you? You know that. I know that. You have to answer them. So for me, I take that into consideration. I block it out. I'm going to take a half hour in the morning, half hour in the midday, half hour in the evening or late afternoon, and that's when I'll answer my email. Because it's not a high return on investment activity, but it is an activity that needs to be done. So it's not only identifying those high return on investment activities, but in addition to that, it's time blocking them. Time blocking the high return on investment activity, even though they may not feel urgent. See, the urgent is that email. The urgent is that instant message. The urgent is returning that phone call. That's the urgent. And we feel like we're doing a lot, and then we get to the end of the day and we go, where did the day go? I didn't get anything done. Because I was involved in a bunch of low return on investment activities. So one of the things we're going to talk about is taking and identifying those high return on investment activities and then making sure I'm doing them regularly by proactively time blocking them in my schedule. Oh, but you don't understand my schedule, and it's hectic. You know what? After I give you this exercise that tracks your time, you'll see there's a pattern. You'll see there's a system. It's like some of you walk in the morning, on a Monday morning, Tuesday morning, Wednesday morning, whatever, and you're frustrated because in the early morning you're not able to get anything done. Because everybody wants some of your time. And there's always a fire and there's always a crisis. And the first thing I say to people is, why are you scheduling anything during that time? Don't schedule anything during that time. Because you know what's going to happen during that time, don't you? So block that. What do you mean block that? Block that everybody's going to need your time for the first 45 minutes of the day. So you go with the flow. It's feng shui. And you go with it instead of fighting against it. Now, remember, I'm just provoking some thought right now. I'm just laying down some foundational thoughts and principles, and over the next week, we're going to unpack it for a whole week. A whole week, Ian? I don't have time for that. Stop. You don't have time not to. Because if you could squeeze out, what if you could squeeze out 3 more hours? What if you could just squeeze out an hour more a month out of work? Squeeze out an hour. Find an hour somewhere. 4 hours in a month, would that help you? If you could pick up 4 hours in a month or 5 hours in a month, would that help you? It might. It might mean that you don't have to take the work home. It might mean that you don't have to think about it on your drive to and fro. Would it impact your quality of life if you could pull out 5 hours and mysteriously find 5 hours along the way for a month? I bet it would. So that's the point of this system. Creating a system that maximizes the utilization of your time. And then there are some fundamental there are some fundamental principles that we'll talk about. The principle of time blocking. The principle of having some long-term goals. See, there are certain roles that you play in your life. There are certain goals that you have in each one of those roles. There are certain high-leverage activities that would get you closer, faster to those goals in each one of those roles. Then the principles that you got to have a tool to do it. Daytimer, smartphone, Outlook, whatever. Then the principle that you have to create a plan and then work your plan. So over the next week, we'll walk through those principles and we'll break them down. See, my attempt here is, and why this is so important to me, is maybe it will free up some time, like I need to free up some time to spend with Nadia, spend with Nia, spend with Kian. And what is the impact of that? We're building the next generation because we've mastered the capacity of creating systems that will get us the return or the outcome that we want. Well, I'm sure you're just like me, man. I'm sure you got kids and a spouse and you got other activities, and sometimes work piles on or other activities within life piles on, because I know you're leaders. You guys are leaders not just within the 4 walls, but you're leaders in other places, in other organizations, in other groups, in Little League, and at your church or your synagogue or your mosque or whatever. Or in your volunteer sector organization. You're leaders. If you can grab these concepts and start to see the world for the systems that it is, then you'll start to proactively create better ones. And as you proactively start to create better ones, your department gets better, and your neighborhood gets better, and your society gets better. Benjamin Franklin said, let the people closest to the problem solve the problem. And Benjamin Franklin was really, really smart. I got to add something to that, Ben, my man Benjamin, Benny Hanna, Benny Hill, Benny Franklin. I got an ADD moment. Got to add something to that, and that's this. The people closest to the problem will solve the problem if they have systems thinking in the root, in their base, because they'll see the system that exists, they'll evaluate whether it's applicable anymore, and then if it's not, they'll create a better one. And that's how we progress. That's how we progress. So the theory here is that we have 30 departments participating in the program, literally from coast to coast and all points in between in North America. If you as mid-level leaders can become better systems thinkers, you not only will have a better quality of life, less stress, so will your employees. But we might create some systems that would be transferable to other departments, that would be transferable to other sectors, that would be transferable. And what's the result? What would the result of that be? Better community, because you touch every citizen from cradle to grave. Every citizen drives on your roads. Every citizen drinks your water. Every citizen goes over the bridge. You create the infrastructure, the platform, and the framework for a community to happen. And if you don't have great systems, we're screwed. And my kids are too. And if your response is, I don't have time, then you need to focus on building a system. So it's not enough to be overwhelmed. Unfortunately, I was overwhelmed. Overwhelmed beyond my capacity. But Archimedes spoke to me, and he speaks to you. As trite and as corny as it sounds. The guy was brilliant. Give me a place to stand and I will move the world. If I got a good enough system, I can do just about anything. Not because I'm smarter than you. I just got a better system. So we who choose to be in the public sector, it's incumbent upon us to create great systems so that the public can benefit. That's noble and that's honorable. So over the next 3 weeks, we're going to try to get you to think like a systems thinker. The first thing that we're going to emphasize, the first thing that we're going to focus on is time. Time. Because it is a perishable commodity. And it is the essence, it is the beginning of everything that we do. If I can maximize the utilization of my time, I can do more with less. If I can maximize the utilization of my time, I can have better relationship with my kids and my spouse. If I can maximize the utilization of my time, I can be more effective for my people, and I can be more effective for who I work for. If I can maximize the utilization of my time. Ian, I'm really good at time management. Okay, if you're really good at time management, that's awesome. But can you teach it to somebody else? Because it's not enough as a leader and a supervisor for you to be really good at it. You're judged on the performance of your people. Are they really good at it? Do they know how to maximize the utilization of their time? Systems thinking. Now, speaking of systems, as we wrap up with our last 3 minutes, commitment. Have you made your commitment? Now, some of you have. I know you have, because I've read them. I read every one of them. And I'm going to start responding to them now. The majority of them have come in. Start responding to them. Sending you a little note. Got your commitment. Read your commitment. Thank you for your commitment. Or here's some advice. Or how are you going to do that? And I'm just going to respond to every one of them. I read every one of them. Respond to every one of them. It takes me some time. Got thousands of people participating, but I respond to every one of them. And I'm going to give you a couple days if you haven't turned in your commitment. And I'm even going to send you what I call a gentle nudge. I'm going to send you a gentle nudge. And I'm going to say to you, hey, didn't get your commitment, gentle nudge. But then shortly after that, I'm running that report. And I'm sending it to your director. And it'll give a list of everyone that's made a commitment. Remember the concept here. The concept is that everybody makes a commitment of what we're going to get better at over the 15 weeks. Because then we can go back to our constituency, the taxpayer, the supervisor, the commissioners, the council, the whoever. We can go back to them and say, you know what? Everybody got better at least one thing. And that means we were good stewards. Good stewards of time, good stewards of money. We were good stewards because everybody got better at least one thing, which should elevate the performance of the whole department. Elevate the performance of the whole department. So that's why that one thing is so important. And in addition, if you can get better at least one thing, how will that make you feel? And what skills will you have developed? Not just the specific skill of the thing you want to be better at, but also your skill at changing. You'll become better at changing. So you're not just better at the skill, the thing, you know, I wanted to lose weight, or I wanted to not get angry so much, or I wanted to be a better delegator, whatever. You'll not only get better at the thing you chose, but you'll build your own self-esteem and self-worth. And finally, and I think most importantly, you'll get better at changing. And how many 40, 35 to 50-year-old, 55, whatever-year-olds can say they know how to change in today's society? That they could fundamentally change. So that when society changes around you, you have the capacity to change. Not your principles and values, but your approaches, your style, and the like. So that's what this is all about. You're vital. You're important. Not just your work, like I was talking about a moment ago, but you personally, because you're the mid-level leader. And you're the linchpin between direction and vision and actual operations that touches every citizen in the community from cradle to grave. We appreciate you. We appreciate your hard work and your effort, and we thank you for all that you do. And I hope that you'll thoughtfully consider this next week and maximizing utilization of your time as the first system that we'll jump into. Have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you on Monday. Bye-bye, everybody.